Crypto Clay, good to see you, man. Brian, good to see you. Nothing like a little world war fears to shake up the market, but I think we're in a pretty decent place on everything. I'm sure we'll get to talk about that. It'll be interesting. I'm actually kind of curious if CNBC is covering it at all. Take a quick look over there. I'm sure they are. All right, live stream should be set up now. Boom. All right. We are locked in. Good morning, everyone. A little bit of a crazy event last night. Obviously, we had some strikes from Israel, which is putting a lot of focus on oil prices. So I'm curious if CNBC is on the oil story already. Just seeing how mainstream media is reacting to this. Obviously, we've seen a lot on X, but this is kind of the first reporting of the oil prices over on CNBC. So I'm just curious what they're going to be talking about over there.
Not quite to this level last year. I made this graphic last year when there were more tensions between Iran and Israel.
Yeah.
So kind of showing some potential targets. This was from last year. So you see sort of on the lower right, it says Karg Island. That, if you hear about that in the media, if you hear Israeli missiles hitting Karg Island, then you're going to have that super spike in the price of oil that we talked about. Outside of that, if this somehow de-escalates, there is plenty of oil, and Saudi Arabia is able to add more and has been adding more barrels to the market. If 1.5 million Iranian barrels are taken off, Saudi Arabia probably doesn't need to fill in all of that 1.5, but they could fairly quickly.
They're not friends with Iran, obviously, but they've been, I think they condemned these attacks. For Israel, would they cooperate? Would that make Iran unhappy if they increase production to make up for what we're not getting?
It's an interesting question. I can't speak for the Saudis, obviously, but I will say this. There is at least an open air of dialogue between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iran obviously is an OPEC member. You referenced OPEC. They're in OPEC.
There's definitely an open conversation between the Trump administration and Saudi Arabia.
100%.
And Saudi Arabia,
and I'm sure the headlines across who knew what will be sort of the next leg of this media story.
Right. Not only who knew what, but who allowed what, because there's airspace that had, you had to fly over somebody's airspace to get there. That country would have to know and not stop you from doing it along the way. But Saudi Arabia has moved so quickly to try and not have its own refineries targeted in some of these areas, too. They have come out and condemned the strikes.
Yes.
So has Qatar. So has the UAE. They don't want to be involved in this and don't want retaliations against
Iran's proxy in Yemen, the Houthis. They're effectively Iran's proxies. They once in a while lob missiles into Saudi Arabia near the oil refineries. They don't do a very good job of it. Saudi Arabia can shoot them down. That's been happening. There is at least an open air of dialogue between many of these Gulf nations. But as I alluded to earlier, the question becomes, what does Iran do? Now, the Ayatollah Khomeini last night put out some threat on social media. There are the sites that Israel hit. Now, you look at the one there, Natanz, that's a nuclear enrichment site, but it's not weapon-grade nuclear. That's called Forum. So if that were to get hit, now you've got this possibility that, is it irradiated? Is there a radiation leak worry? There are other macro things. Israel's targets were personnel and uranium enrichment, but non-dangerous uranium enrichment, if that makes any sense. It was kind of a body blow. But if they go after Island or the uranium enrichment facility.
In Fordo, I mean, we've been talking to people this morning who have suggested that they would if they could, or maybe they do have plans to do it, but it would take U.S. bunker busters bombs to be able to really penetrate there because it's a half mile under a mountain.
It is. And that you're talking about the weapons-grade uranium enrichment that the JCPOA, the Iran peace deal, they're trying to stop Iran from being able to enrich enough uranium to create a bomb versus having uranium to operate nuclear facilities. Yes, Joe.
You remember Signalgate? So after Signalgate, and it was about the Houthi, striking the Houthis, and then people sort of rolled their eyes when President Trump said that we settled things with the Houthis and they weren't going to do anything anymore. We haven't heard much recently from the Houthis.
The Fifth Fleet is sitting off the coast of Bahrain. The Strait of Hormuz.
They've been behaving themselves, the Houthis?
Yeah,
to some extent, right?
Like I said, once in a while they launch a missile into Saudi Arabia.
What about
We're still
now?
Here.
Yeah.
To your point, here's the next leg, and here's what I want the audience to take away. If there is an escalation, a further escalation, Iran does something back to Israel, which has closed its airspace. I have a friend whose wife and daughter are in Tel Aviv right now for high school graduation. They're scared. Understandably, they want to get out. If there is an escalation, is there mines? We've heard that this is nothing new about this. Okay, is there mines being laid in the Strait of Hormuz in which 20% of the world's oil passes? And does the Fifth Fleet of the United States, which is sitting kind of off the coast of Iran, it is the biggest non-World War II naval fleet in the world. Do they have to react to anything Iran may do? The question, Joe, is this. How much do you react to this? Do you mine a few ships? Or does this become a full-out escalation? The oil market is going to watch that. And let's all pray that
and it
does not happen.
might depend on Fordo and our involvement with whatever happens.
All right, well, there's a quick little story. So pretty much last night, Israel hit a whole bunch of nuclear engineer, nuclear scientist, nuclear facility, pretty much all of it. So that's why crude oil is doing what it's doing right now. We have crude oil going on a huge spike, because the world doesn't know if oil is going to become an issue. Now, the underreported part about this a little bit is that Saudi Arabia seems to be very much in line with the United States here. And they obviously can up production and do all those things. So right now, I think the move by oil is a little bit preemptive. I don't think it's necessarily the case that this is something that's like, okay, I think right now the market's a little bit overreacting to the news. But if things escalate, this could become quite the issue on the oil side. So right now we have oil reacting accordingly. It's spiking pretty big. And we're just not going to know much at all until we see if there is any kind of retaliation on this front. Let's see what we got in the chat. Blessing all. I hope we think about Brad predicts how much volume XRP will take in the next 5 years. Please let you know what you hold and think for the long term. Yep, absolutely, Rhonda. Always so important to think over the long run. We're always going to have bumps like this, but one of my favorite charts to show people, especially when we're going through times of uncertainty. And guys, this is something you can always kind of do is, this is Apple. I know you guys are probably thinking of Apple as like, wait, what are we looking at Apple for? What is wrong with, okay, here we go. Take a look at Apple. And this chart looks crazy right now, but let me zoom in real quick. Take a look at Apple in 2008, right? Like the biggest financial crisis the world has ever seen. Apple got decimated, down close to 60%. And guess what? It was back to a new all-time high. Not even a year later. So always understand that there's going to be short-term bumps in the road. Not saying at all that this is going to be anything like 2008. I don't think it will at all. And we're still very early into figuring out what's going on here, but Rondell's absolutely correct. This is nothing more than a bump in the road, and we'll move through it. And none of this impacts the direction of XRP, but oil's going crazy, and that's going to be the story of the day. Oil prices. Gotti, good to see you. Good morning. How high do we need oil to go for it to start being bad enough to crash Japan? It's a good question. Let's see how the yen is. Let's see how the yen's reacting right now. I haven't taken a look at the yen yet. Gotta zoom out to a longer time frame. What is this? Trading views being so weird right now. Japanese yen futures giving me like the worst charts. Here we go. Go over to a week chart. Yeah, so we'll see how the yen reacts this morning. Obviously, the yen has been on a very steep drop since inception. And right now, the yen's actually not reacting too much to this. But we'll see if it gets hit going out throughout the trading day. Right now, relatively little movement in the yen at so far. But we'll see how the yen continues to react throughout the day. Right now, it's holding up on this news, but wouldn't be surprised if we saw some changes throughout the trading day. And honestly, escalation is the big thing, because right now, this is kind of, while a big development, not really too much more than what we've been seeing over the past couple months. So now we just have to monitor to see if it gets escalated. Silver Days, good to see you. Obviously, we're hoping for no escalation. And also, guys, make sure to smash the like button. Really appreciate everyone doing that. Want to... Want to give a quick shout out here, guys. I know some of you probably noticed. Will Carr, member of the XRP community, former basketball player, met him in XRP Vegas. He started up this nutrition company, Genesee. He sent me some of these bars. They're outstanding for 20 grams of protein. I've been working out my entire life, and just wanted to help a member of the community build out his company. So have him as the sponsor of the channel right now. He's not paying to be a sponsor. I think I get like 5 or 10% on any protein bar that's being sold, just to be transparent. But really just wanted to help him out. They're great protein bars. Really, really good member of the XRP community. Met him at XRP Vegas. He's like 1 million feet tall. Really good dude. And just wanted to be able to promote kind of what he's doing on the channel and be able to give back and help him out a little bit. So quick shout out there. Will's a great guy. Member of the XRP community. Was interviewing a whole bunch of people at XRP Vegas. And he threw me a bar there, and I was like, oh wow, this is outstanding. So make sure to check it out if you are interested in trying it out. Just kind of cool that he's doing that. Oh, they taste incredible. They taste incredible. I went through blind on it too, because he was like there, and I was like, all right, man, I'll try it later. And then I tried it later, and I was like, oh my God, this is like really good. And then I got back, and I gave one to my roommate. I was like, let me know if you think this is good. And he's like, yeah, this is very good. He's like, for 20 grams of protein, I thought it was going to taste like dust, like most of them do. But if you've ever had a protein bar with 20 grams of protein and compare it to this, it's incredible. So if you are interested, check it out. If you do like protein bars, great dude, member of the XRP community. And I can promise you will not be disappointed, especially by the peanut butter one. The peanut butter one is fantastic. What's up with the new Coinbase credit card, 4% Bitcoin rewards for everything spent? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm not sure if there's anything else to get into other than that. That's about it. It's just a Bitcoin reward for what you charge. Let's see if they're talking about CNBC is already off the Middle East stuff. Let's see if anything's being talked about on Fox in regards to this. This is Fox is they go to Fox and there's just a McDonald's window. Oh, here we go. See what they're talking about.
We knew how to keep them there. Again, that is a post coming in from Trey Yingst at Fox News after speaking with an Israeli security official there. We will continue to follow all of the latest on this and bring you updates as we get them. I've said it a few times, but I do want to remind you that President Trump is going to meet at 11 a.m. Eastern Time with the National Security Council. This is the topic of discussion. It is a closed-door meeting. Cameras not allowed inside. However, it is possible we could get comments from President Donald Trump a bit later on today. If that happens, we will bring them to you in full, live and unfiltered, as always, on Live Now from Fox. For now, I do want to head to a quick break at 8:45 on the East Coast.
Of course, right when we get to a break. Whatever, we'll keep bouncing around here, see if anything interesting is being said. It doesn't look like there's any updates from last night. Why is Ripple looking to buy pre-IPO back? They want to stay private? No, they just, in my opinion, they just want to have as many shares as possible for when they do go public. Yeah, they just want to have as many shares as possible for when they do go public, right? They don't want a whole bunch of shares floating around. It lets them keep as much control of the company as possible. So I actually think them buying back their shares, one, shows how bullish they are on the company, rather than buying other companies. They're like, no, I just want to buy my own. And then the other thing is like, they're just reaccumulating their own shares. So both are very bullish signs. I'll tell you that right now. Both are very bullish signs. But what you don't want to see is companies selling a whole bunch of shares. Companies selling a whole bunch of shares is more normally like, oh man, like you're not making enough money. You have all these issues. Tracy says latest, the SEC officially withdraws multiple regulatory proposals, including the expanded custody rule, Rule 3B16 for DeFi exchanges, and enhanced ESG reporting requirements. Oh, that's awesome. Good to see that. That's really good. Tracy, thank you for dropping that. Thank you for dropping that news. Not so much going on in the cryptocurrency market. Last time I checked XRP, it was kind of recovering from what happened last night. Hasn't really been any further escalation since last night, and that's been good. So we kind of hit that liquidation bottom that we normally get on XRP, which is a really good sign. And now we're just seeing if this is going to hold. But we kind of had that spike down. Oh, whoops. We kind of had that spike down. Looks like potentially the bottom already. And then now we just have to hope things don't get any crazier throughout the day and the weekend. So fingers crossed things stay relatively tame here and we don't get any more escalations. That would be the ideal move. I don't know if I'm very convinced there won't be any more escalations. I think there probably will be, but hopefully they're at least defended well against, and then we're kind of like, all right, well, back to where we were. Looks like 213 was the bottom. I think it got as low as 209. I think it wicked to like 209 or 208, but yeah. Inkit Tattoo says, hi there, Mickle. Moving forward, where do you see XRP's price ending this year? And follow up, until when do you think the bull cycle will run? I just kind of think it's going to be more of like a continuous long-term bull run over the next kind of decade. I think there's definitely going to be crashes along the way, but I don't think they're going to be the same 4-year bear market. So that's kind of my prediction. I kind of am predicting that it's going to be a break of the typical 4-year cycle, and you're going to have longer term appreciation throughout the next year or two. And then you'll have events along the way, right? Like stuff like this that derails things in the short term. But I generally think that that is the case. Iran news reporting that the top 6 nuclear scientists were killed in the strikes by Israel. That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. So yes, and that's sort of where this gets interesting. It's like, was this crippling enough to like set them back where they don't want to counterattack? Is this just a big, is this like just massively provoking and like making it even worse? Like, I'm sure it's obviously provoking to some degree, but if it was crippling enough at the same time, you know, it's kind of a calculated decision. The biggest sign that I've seen is that there hasn't been any counter offensive yet, and that's good, because that just means that people or the Iranians are at least kind of thrown off enough where they're not ready on the spot to start like a full out escalation. So that is at least the good part. I think I was listening to a lot of geopolitical people talk about this, and that was kind of like the big thing they were saying. It would have been much worse if it was already up and running. Let's see what else we got. Disagree about XRP crashes as it gains utility. Well, crashes are relative, right? Like if you get XRP now and one day in the future XRP is $100 and then it crashes down to like, I don't know, like 65, right? Like I still think you're going to see stuff like that. It just won't really seem like a crash to the people who have been in it forever, because your cost basis is so low.
In the region. However, Israeli officials say that they actually presented the U.S. with evidence of Iran's efforts to make a nuclear bomb, and that this was done in coordination with the Americans. Now, this morning, President Trump posted on social media, in part saying, quote, "There's already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left." Now, back here at home, the NYPD says because of the escalation in the Middle East, they are deploying additional resources at Jewish sites and Israeli sites all throughout the city. And of course, we'll continue to keep you updated. Live on the east side, Dan, Rosanna, back to you.
A big thank you there to Haley Fixler. She joined us live a bit earlier on this morning to provide a breakdown of all of the latest information. But as I mentioned, a lot coming in, so we're going to make sure to keep you updated here on Live Now from Fox, as we always do. We're going to head to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour, but a lot more news to get to coming up in just a few.
Jeez, I can't dodge these freaking commercials. All I want is some good updates. CNBC's been talking about the India Boeing jet crash this entire time. I guess it's tough for Boeing. Boeing has been through a storm recently. See what Goldman Sachs is saying.
I think if I were at the Fed, I'd be thinking, I'm reminding myself that ideally these will be a one-time cost shock. I'll also be reminded that in a world of overcapacity for goods, even with this, companies will have negotiating leverage over suppliers to push prices down. They may have to take some out of margin. They may have to put some in prices. So if I were at the Fed, I would say the height of uncertainty about the impact is in the next several months. And over the horizon, as I said, I think a lot of the other trends lead me to believe that we can maybe resume our march toward our 2% goal later this year into next year. And so the height of the uncertainty is we're probably in the middle of it right now.
You saw some of the Fed futures yesterday, kind of surprising, maybe not surprising, but can those change the first a month from now? If we got hotter numbers, do we go back down? Do you think what's your outlook?
Well, directionally, what I'd make the Fed futures is the first meeting where there's a real meaningful probability of a cut is September. So what I take from it, which I think is about right, that no action in June, unlikely in July. The Fed, though, it will likely prepare itself and prepare in its comments that it might take action into the fall. But we still don't know what the tariff rates are. And we still have a budget bill and a tax bill that has not yet been passed. And we'll see over the summer what the details of that are. And so it just tells you that the summer is going to be spent processing this. Obviously, there'll be tension in certain parties wanting the Fed to take action sooner. And I think the Fed will be on its front foot, but it's got to understand what the facts are on tariffs and how they flow through. And I think it still needs a little bit more information in order to see that situation clarify.
Rob, if you were on the Fed, would you really be looking at the details of the big, beautiful bill? Would that have any influence on whether you cut rates or left rates the same?
The main things I'd be looking at are well, two things. Number one, we're going on the margin from more government-directed spending, American Rescue Act, Inflation Reduction Act, Infrastructure CHIPS Act, very directed, to less of that. And to the extent we're going to run deficits, it's more tax-related, more money in people's pockets, which I think will be less inflationary. So that's one thing I will take from it than maybe the previous approach. And then the second comment would be, I started the year thinking that deficits would likely be going down and the budget fiscal might be contractionary. And we're now getting to the point it may be neutral or expansionary. So it reduces my thought that we're going to have a recession. I think probabilities of recession are going down. We're in a relatively tight job market. Companies are they're not hiring as much, but they're also not firing because the job market's so tight. So all that makes me believe that we're going to have some growth stability, sluggish but stable. And my main focus ought to be on seeing how these tariffs will flow through, and then getting myself ready to potentially take action.
We got to go. Can you imagine we really are somewhere in between Goldilocks, great economy, inflation's coming down, things are awesome, and stagflation? And we're somewhere in between there, and we really, the Fed really doesn't know which is more likely. I guess it depends on how the facts change and circumstances and policy and everything else.
And I'd be cautiously optimistic that this may well work through. The issue is we just need to take some more time, and there's several.
So that's pretty interesting. The Goldman Sachs guy is kind of saying, like, look, a lot of this is being fueled by uncertainty. And, like, yes, there's a lot going on in the world right now, but he's looking at the inflation, in my opinion, very similar to what we've been looking at, where it's like, all right, well, a lot of people are talking about inflation being this big issue, but it's only been going in a positive direction for quite a bit of time now. So that's kind of interesting to hear him say that, because this is what I've been pointing out and kind of my thing. It's like, look, a lot of people are freaking out about the tariffs and how they're going to impact inflation. But like, if we just take a look at what inflation's been doing over the past couple of months, I mean, it's been in one direction, and that direction has been crashing down to the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. So interesting note by him there. I tend to agree. It's like, until we see something to the contrary, right? So until we see something that like looks like this, then it's like, what are we like? It's just fears. It's nothing more, anything material, because inflation is crashing. So kind of an interesting note there. And I do really like the idea that this has kind of been a contrarian view. For a very long time, everyone's just been saying tariffs equal inflation, tariffs equal inflation, tariffs equal inflation, which is like fine, right? Like, that's a thesis, but like, no one knows what's going to happen. And so many people in the mainstream media are all writing this thesis. Typically the mainstream is wrong. And he's one of the few people I've heard kind of go up there in a while of watching CNBC and actually make the case that it's, hey, these might not be inflationary. So, oh, my X video is not working. Okay, that's interesting. No wonder the viewership is so low. That makes sense that the X video isn't working. That's fine. Whatever. Very interesting point though. It's really cool to hear the Goldman Sachs guy kind of like saying, like, look, a lot of people have been talking about these tariffs bringing inflation, but maybe it's more talk than any actual action. And like, we're looking at the inflation chart right here, right? And like, that's not going up, that's going down. And we're very close to it just being like, I mean, take a look at this, guys. I mean, our inflation is under the rate of 2017, 2018, 2020. You know, it's like no one was really freaking out about inflation in 2018 and all those other times. And I just kind of asked the question, why is everyone so freaked out about it now? They're worried about these future events, but until these future events start doing anything, maybe people are wrong about the future events. Maybe things play out a little bit differently than people expect. So just leave your mind open to that. Just seems to me like the mainstream media is so sold that we're going into this inflationary depression and recession. I can't get convinced by it, by the data yet. I can't get convinced by the data that that's what's going to happen. I can understand why it's a fear. I can understand why people are forecasting that might be the case, but people are talking about it like it's a certainty, and there's certainly no certainty on any of it. Take a look at this real quick.
More about that. I mean, we talked to a bunch of different folks who are building in the Ripple ecosystem, who are bringing products to market that solve this. But what are some of the ones that really highlight that for you? Tell me about a real use case for these real world use cases.
Well, I think in the short term, what we're going to see is we're going to see institutional grade assets like tokenized money market funds, digital commercial paper, tokenized real estate that are going to be primarily held by institutions. But I think we're going to see a pivot where that enables these sort of mass adoption use cases. Stablecoins are a good example. Stablecoins are a institutional product that produced by institutions. The mint-burn relationships are between institutions and institutions. But you see this massive, these DeFi ecosystems, which are anonymous and unpermissioned, that are using the stablecoins as collateral and using them for payments. So I think that we're going to see that pivot between those institutional assets being launched, by well-known companies that are, massive asset managers that are going to then, at first, they're going to sell those products just to institutions. But I think we're on that cusp of being able to use them in those DeFi applications.
Is there anything you think that the market isn't fully appreciating?
I think the market doesn't appreciate that institutional adoption is not an alternative to the sort of traditional DeFi. I hate to say traditional DeFi, that sounds so silly. But, retail mass adoption DeFi aimed at direct to consumers. I think what people don't appreciate is that institutional products are what's going to make the next wave of DeFi work. DeFi is kind of a little bit stuck right now in that it's offering the products that we have the capability to offer and not so much the products that people need. And so that's fine. I'm not opposed to doing that. But if we want to grow the DeFi market from the current $120 billion into eating a piece of the $100 trillion institutional loans, market, or all those other big markets, I think it's that connection that we're going to have to forge. We're going to have to bring that in from the outside.
That right there is such a good point. One of the points I've been making for a while. It's look, there's a lot of cool stuff going into DeFi, but there's also a lot of really, really high value things going on in the traditional market. And, if you can get trillions and billions of dollars from the traditional market and just get those activities on chain, that's a bigger sum than anything the DeFi market has created. Some people were commenting on this. Fred Rispoli talking about the new Ripple SEC filing. In the newest saga of Ripple SEC, I don't like this filing based on how obvious it was that Judge Torres' last ruling that she was pissed. I recommended a long, detailed motion explaining the SEC's failures in crypto regulation with commissioner declarations and some apologies from Ripple on what it got tagged on. Instead, we got one paragraph on the SEC dismantles and a paltry mention of the SEC's crypto task force. Oof. The parties cite enough law for the court to grant it, but they also did the same in the last one that was denied. This is pure discretion on Judge Torres on whether to grant it. I don't see it getting done, sadly. In my opinion, this is one of the rare whiffs we've seen in the legal acumen of Ripple's counsel. I'm hopefully optimistic that Judge Torres reads the room and is willing to just get the case off her plate, but my confidence is low. That said, leaving the jurisdiction in place is not a death. Ripple can still sell XRP to institutions, just not the same way it did pre-2018. Conservative institutions will be hesitant to get involved. More forward-thinking ones will not. Okay, so Fred Rispoli just thinks he wishes there was a little bit more substance to the recent filing. I think that's kind of the sentiment I was seeing in the chat. Makes a lot of sense. I didn't get a chance to actually go through the filing, nor would I really understand if it had enough substance or not, right? But we'll see what Judge Torres ends up doing here. I think the most important point is the fact that Ripple can just sell XRP in a way that doesn't violate the 2016 rule. And even if one of the things I don't see anyone saying is even if Ripple needs to just file those sales with the SEC, that can also be a potential solution. So even if a financial institution is worried, they can just do the filing with the SEC and then move the XRP over. So I continue to think this is an absolute non-issue. It's definitely a story and a saga that needs to be closed out. I think a little over 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, we'll get a determination from Judge Torres, and then we'll see what that next move is. It looks like Fred Rispoli is hoping there would be a little bit more SEC, hey, we messed everything up, this is our fault, but it also makes sense why the SEC might not want to be there. Going back to Fox News real quick. See if they've got anything last minute updates and sort of this situation in the Middle East. Obviously, that's going to be the big driver of markets. If this is, there's always one headline, right? There's one made headline that people are picking up on. So right now, the big one headline is going to be oil prices and what's happening in the Middle East.
As that does get underway. What I want to show you right now is a live look over Washington, D.C., one of the many cameras that we have in that location. And there's no question there was already going to be heightened security there for the parade. A lot of different agencies coming together to make sure that folks stay safe. But now, considering the situation between Israel and Iran, that security likely to be even more heightened. So we are keeping an eye on that situation there. I do want to bring in Nick Demaro, former New Jersey police officer and detective, and the CEO of LEAD, which is law enforcement against drugs and...
I don't need to hear from a New Jersey police officer. Not great coverage all around, but there you go. All the best coverage is always on X these days anyway. Just curious what mainstream media is talking about. I'm going to scan for any more quick last minute updates. But guys, I think we're good. Guys, I hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll have our fingers crossed that this doesn't materialize into anything too much larger. I overall feel pretty decent about it after seeing what happened last night and not seeing too much of... Oh, this might be interesting, actually. Take a look at this real quick. Oh, so these were the specific targets. Oh, wow, the underground. It's kind of crazy that they know exactly what the entire inside of this building looks like. That's supposed to be like top secret. They're just like, oh, well, here's a 3D scan of the exact inside of this Iranian nuclear bunker that's supposed to be like, you can see right here, they show on the screen. It's like, here's the entire facility. And then like, here's what you get on Google Maps. And then they're like, all right, let's just zoom into the ground here and let us show you this thing that no one's supposed to know about, all the tunnels going to it, and exactly what's in every single room. It's like just an X video. They're probably on X. They're probably like, oh man. It's not even like a little bit of a secret. It's not even like, oh, this is classified information. It's like, oh no, this is just on X. Interesting stuff. Guys, thank you so much for coming. Have a great weekend. I'll see you all on Monday if nothing crazy happens over the weekend. And for now,